Now, let's just pick it up from that particular point. I start you off with the Daily Nation, that particular story concerning the state of fuel and oil farms in our country is actually the main read on this front page. Here they go on to say oil farms burn their fingers. Now, a clique of rogue oil marketers are facing financial losses after the state approved chops on their import allocation as punishment for abetting in the petroleum intermittent crisis that we have been seeing through higher exports. Now, despite the shortages in the domestic outlets, they have caused motorist businesses and many Kenyans untold suffering. Now, this story has been covered here in proper detail. So, in simpler terms, looking at the next 3 cycles of fuel that will be brought into the country, there are some particular oil marketers that will have a shorter leash. The allocation that is normally given to them is going to be reduced because of this situation that they have resorted to export oil to our neighboring countries and petroleum products to our neighboring countries at the expense of the Kenyan and the local market, and they're exporting at a higher price and not catering to the crisis that we are witnessing here in the country. And yesterday, the Petroleum Ministry did give a nod to EPRA to proceed with this quote-unquote punishment on oil marketers. And let me just read for you as it was read. Quote-unquote, EPRA hereby recommends that in the allocation of capacity for the next 3 import cycles, key considerations should be given to the reduction of capacity share for all OMCs who increase their transit volume over and above the normal during this supply crisis period. So this is yet to take effect, but of course tomorrow is a day that so many Kenyans are waiting, or rather the 14th, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is 14th. Yes, it is tomorrow. It is a day that so many Kenyans are waiting to hear. You know, actually yesterday, there was a piece of paper that was circulating on social media, which had a list of petrol stations that actually have fuel. Guys are just sending out the word, by the way, if you don't have fuel, go to any of these, utapata mafuta. Tumefika hapo. Tumefika hapo.
Someone said, and this is on a very, very, very light note, I know what the government says about smoking weed. But someone was saying, squeezy petroli ni kama kuvuta banki.
Manze.
Everybody's looking for it, but no one wants to say where it is before they get their fix, right? It's on a very light note. Very light note. Very light note.
Inaenda chain sasa. That particular list.
It's just Kenyans trying to find a light moment in the midst of the hardships.
It's really sad, man, having to see these queues. And the fact of the matter still remains, there is fuel in the country.
That is the saddest fact, by the way.
But the oil marketers are saying to be hoarding. And this goes back to a story that was also here on the Daily Nation yesterday when they actually put a spotlight on Ruby's, which is the 3rd largest oil marketer in the country, for #1 withholding and rationing sales.
Yeah.
So it is one of those oil marketing companies that might face these consequences. We are not saying it will, it's just one of them. They have actually gone to highlight Vivo as the largest, followed by Total Energies coming in 2nd, and Ruby's coming in at 3rd position. They are the 3 largest oil marketers in the country. And Ruby's, it was noted that some of the petrol stations, kuna kamaneno kanaendelea. But nonetheless, coming back to the front page of the Daily Nation, politics, of course, also finds its way here. Uhuru and Raila fight Azimio storm as Ruto camp seals deal. So it was a day of contrast for the 2 leading parties. On one side, Azimio was having a crisis meeting to quell the unrest that is going on. And of course, this was catalyzed further by the protest letters that was written by Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka. And on the other extreme end, UDA, rather Ruto, was able to pen an agreement with 11 party leaders supporting his presidential bid, and this particular deal, of course, is going to be forwarded to the Registrar of Political Parties. All this happened yesterday. We'll be giving you details in just a bit. And finally, Form 1 placement. Parents are now scrambling to get transfers based on the schools that their children have been allocated. So many parents are saying that, given this time that we are in with the elections, we would prefer our children closer to us during this time in case of any emergencies. But I will be letting you know what principals had to say in response to this. Victor.
All right, so if you thought that as Kenyans we are having serious problem in terms of fuel prices, now let me give you some funny figures here, not funny per se, but some figures of super petrol in Tanzania per litre. It goes for 152 shillings, diesel 144, and kerosene 143. That is in Kenyan shilling, all right? In Uganda, a litre of petrol retails at 165, diesel 141, and kerosene 138. While in Kenya we do 134 to a litre, 115 diesel, and 103 kerosene.
No wonder they were exporting some oil marketers.
But then again, Regina, do we have shortage of petrol in these two countries, Tanzania and Uganda? I love that. I love that. Do you have shortage?
Do you think they do? With this current report that has already been released, that now EPRA has already done an analysis that shows that, there have been daily loadings of petroleum.
Yes.
Yes. And oil farms, what we are referring to as OMs, have given priority to exports to neighboring countries.
Oh, okay.
Put
so for
two
them,
and two together.
For them, it's business as usual.
As usual.
yes.
And they fetch a higher price per litre.
You see,
So it's the time to reap.
we are a capitalistic state. Pesa mfukoni, it's your investment. You're not here to make losses. But at the end of the day, there's an element of mistrust between the OMs from where I sit and government. And I think, without saying so much, and because I'm not an expert, I think this fuel crisis is artificial. And it is somewhat a strike by the OMs to force the hand of government to release the funds, and even better yet, consider having an open market, like having the prices not regulated by EPRA.
Retaliation of sorts.
I tend to think so. I tend to think so. I really tend to think so.
I think if the government and anyone in the value chain that has a say when it comes to oil and petroleum products, they all need to have a structured way of business. Because one thing that we have to understand is that adjustments have to be made as time goes.
Yeah, depending on the prevailing circumstances.
Depending on the prevailing circumstances, not focusing on maybe the time that particular batch arrived in the country. Regina did mention it's always 6 months in advance. So, kama maziwa saini 60 bob. Now, it's expected to be used in the next 6 months. And looking at the market and this economic space that will be in the next 6 months, adjusting to then, I think, is where hawapatani. They're not agreeing kama tutatumia ile price ya buying ama the current market rates. And at the end of the day, fahali wawili wakipigana,
mimi na wewe ndo tunaumia. But I still think, in my own opinion, the state has a huge part to play, particularly when it comes to what is happening right now with this fuel crisis. I remember when this actually got the limelight, we had different stakeholders, particularly even the PS, was very categorical in saying that part of what had informed what you're experiencing in terms of fuel shortage was the panic buying, whereby we know fully well that that may not quite really be the case because fuel was actually there. And we are, again, just as Ray mentioned, we have that fuel levy fund, whereby every litre of petrol that you buy, there's money that goes to that fuel levy, which is supposed to stabilize fuel prices altogether. So if that were the case, and whereby Kenyans keep buying fuel all the time, and whereby that money keeps going to that levy, so what happened to that money in the first place that we're getting into this crisis? And then what is really happening that oil marketers are saying that the state owes them 20 billion and the state saying that they owe them 13 billion and they've only deposited 8.2 billion. So where is this confusion coming from? So these people are in business at the end of the day.
No, in as much as it's business at the end of the day, my question would be, should oil marketers have a say on the price of fuel that EPRA gets to review every mid-month? Should they be involved in determining this price based on how the prices at which they...
Actually, that's what they want.
They want to have
as opposed to being told,
exactly, an open market.
Mafuta, sawa, mutauza hivi.
Exactly, that's what they want.
But
they want to have a say.
Watauza hivi, they get a cut.
Yeah.
Before we had this petroleum levy, they were doing up until 12 bob, 13 shillings per litre. But now, look at it this way. I tend to think that the oil marketers, in as much as they are conducting business and no one wants to make losses, I think we have taken greed and selfishness a notch higher. A report now indicates with EPRA that they have opted to take the commodity to neighboring countries and withhold supplies locally.
The local market.
Man, these are Kenyans. These are Kenyans who are taking advantage of the situation. KBC, as late as yesterday, revealed that stocks within their storage of up until 139.58 million liters are still held. You see, they hold the commodity for OMs, for them to come pick and distribute. But OMs decided, you know what, we ain't going to do this now. We are building pressure. And as they're building pressure to have their terms adhered to, Mwananchi is suffering. And it got me thinking, if I was in a position, such a position, would I be going for what is in my pocket but for the greater good? That's a question that we need to ask ourselves on an individual capacity.
Because at the end of the day...
For instance, imagine now if we had this kind of situation and instead of just talking about petrol, would be also talking about the lack of diesel. Diesel runs our PSVs. Diesel runs our industries. Literally would be staring at chaos, and that these OMs are the same people who bring in diesel. So they're opting to continue distributing diesel and deliberately withholding super petrol. That is my simple understanding of the situation, and it boils down to greed.
Because those that use super petrol cannot cause chaos?
You see, a majority
to those that use diesel?
Mimi na wewe. You see, PSVs, it does not affect industry because if it affected...
It's a 70-30.
Yes, if it was affecting industry, it would be considered economic sabotage. But where we are sitting right now, if this continues past the 14th, it will be 2 weeks. And I think it will boil down to economic sabotage.
So now you can imagine the price of unga changed, the price of milk, which is actually out of stock. Most of the
for the past 2 weeks, there's a particular brand that I have not seen in almost 6 supermarkets.
Of what milk?
Gas. Yes, milk.
But you see, when it comes to milk, I tend to think milk, we also need to be a little bit alive to what is happening. This issue of drought and such, even with the cancellation of the deal that we were to export to Oman. This is out of our hands because of where we find ourselves in as far as matters of climate. Remember, even dairy production, a majority who are in this business are small-scale farmers. Yes, small-scale farmers are the ones that power a majority of industries and various sectors. So we are facing a drought. So far, we have now reports of this African army war within 11 counties. We have 32 counties that are staring at drought and starvation. You know, the rains are not yet here. Yet we are told that we need to look out for them. So we're in a catch-22 when it comes to matters
the crisis that the country is experiencing.
But I'm also going to throw the spanner into the works. Who said that we need to be relying on liquid milk?
Kenya is a drinking nation. I mean, tea.
Kenya is a drinking
nation.
Milk is now the recommendation.
Powdered milk.
Oh yes, we could get alternatives.
Maziwa Fresh has some, it slaps differently.
But honestly, even as we talk about the milk shortage, fuel shortage,
when it's in excess.
Do you guys realize that even as we talk about the shortage of most of these basic commodities, we still are grappling with trying to understand? When the CS was reading the budget, he talked about the 10% being imposed on some products that he didn't mention. So which products could this be? I mean, already as it is, the basic commodities, the prices are already high.
You know, Doreen, whenever any prices will ever be increased or any tax, whatever the case, it will always be on fast-moving goods.
Yes.
And so this boils down to the basics. Milk,
so
bread,
we should brace ourselves for more
price ya pizza.
No.
Price ya pizza haitaongezeka.
That's meant for people like me who, you know, we
have come across the draft. I've come across the draft, the proposed draft finance bill. And that list of those that are going to be attracting 10% in excess duty, I did not see any basic commodity, so to speak, unless I go through it again. However, when it comes to the price of wheat, we expect that this is going to go up owing to the supply chain disruptions, given that we do not know how linked Kenya was to Ukraine. Until now, we had analysts and economists coming to tell us, you know, a majority of our fertilizer comes from Ukraine. Majority of our wheat comes from Ukraine.
Yes.
You're like, geez, we didn't know. We thought we were that far removed from what is happening in as far as East Europe is concerned. So that is something that we need to look out for. But let me bring back this conversation to the matters of the fuel crisis. While we are talking about the inavailability of this particular commodity at the fuel stations, you have seen even from pictures when we're doing a spot check, you're seeing people walking around with mitungis, with jerry cans and such. The question around fuel adulteration is alive and real. You're finding people actually hawking petrol. But how sure are you that because you're desperate, whatever it is that, you know, you're getting into your engine,
they're hawking petrol, how did they get it?
Is actually the right thing. So fuel adulteration, this is one of the reasons, actually this is where EPRA comes in to regulate this. But now things are getting out of hand because, you know, when there's increased demand against low supply, some unscrupulous people come into the value chain to take advantage of that situation.
Regina, I have a request.
Adulteration is real. So my friends, if it ain't from the pump.
All right. Allow me, ladies, allow me to go through the newspaper. Kidogo tu. Kidogo tu. We'll be back to that.
Fuel is causing crisis everywhere.
Yeah, okay. And I know this issue of fuel is also on other dailies. I know, Doreen, you have it, as well as Regina. So let me just get you on the front page of the Star. Mystery suicide, quote-unquote, of Ruto Uhuru elite bodyguards. Bodies of 2 Reke squad members, regular cop found in Nairobi, Mombasa, within 24 hours. Now, spent bullet found as police probe possible murder. All right, on the front page of the Star here, Ruto's presidential bid now, supported by 12 parties, which was also covered on the Daily Nation there. Mystery suicide of Uhuru Ruto guards, taking the second page here. And this actually comes 2 years down the line. You remember the death of Kinei, the guy who, someplace in Imara Daima, who was found again dead in his house. So police are handling this matter. Now, there's a man who was arrested in court for masquerading as a lawyer. Akikenya nchi yetu. So a gentleman called Motari was unmasked after he was asked whether he had a practicing certificate. And he said he actually appeared before Chief Magistrate Wendy Mishemi, who unmasked him by the court after he was questioned whether he had a practicing certificate from the registrar of the High Court. And he said that he defended himself, saying that he had no practicing certificate and was only holding brief for another lawyer who was in record for the accused. So he was actually representing a Canadian Abdullahi Tamba Koro, who has been charged with obtaining 76 million shillings from former Garsen MP Danson Mungatana by false pretense. Yes, this is Kenya.
Audacity too.
Audacity.
We joke too much in this country.
Yeah. You take yourself to the lion's den.
Yeah. And actually, when he was arrested, the magistrate actually ordered the court orderlies to arrest him immediately in the court precincts. So, yeah, it's against the code of practice and conduct of the lawyers. All right, life unbearable for many as petrol shortage bites. We've discussed that at length. Very quickly, revealed why there is major trouble in Azimio, Kenya, Azimio 1 Kenya. Kalonzo entry has complicated the matrix. Now a make or break moment for formation. This is what we'll be discussing in the next hour. But again, Raphael Tuju yesterday appeared after a meeting at Serena with the Secretary Generals of different parties and said that everything is under control at the formation. But then now, as that was happening, the DP was at Ngong Race Course having backup by 12 parties, and each entity will now retain its identity while supporting the alliance. That's so far what I have on the Star newspaper. Doreen, what do you have?
Let me start on that note on what is happening in Azimio la Umoja 1 Kenya. Actually, that is the main read on the PD this morning. That's what you're waking up to with the tag running mate or nothing. Kalonzo now demands. The question is, there are cracks in this coalition. The running mate question brewing dilemma in that particular coalition. And then just going by what Dan Manzo, that is the MP Makueni, also forms part of the legal advisors of Kalonzo Musyoka, and what he said is that he has actually also confirmed that they are taking nothing short of the running mates in that particular coalition, and also they have already submitted to the Registrar of Political Parties a letter protesting the registration of the coalition, that is the Azimio la Umoja 1 Kenya coalition, saying that what they signed on April 1st, that three-legged stool which is comprising of ODM, Jubilee and OKA, is not what was presented on April 9th to the Register of Political Parties. And in between April 1st and April 9th is when there was that caucus which was formed, the Mwanzo Mpya, whereby those other parties or the smaller parties were saying that they felt like they were being sidelined in some of the decisions that this coalition was making. And also you can remember that the Machakos governor Alfred Mutua had threatened of looking for alternative options, and also citing that the DP had called him, and particularly he was looking into joining that party up until Raila Odinga came to the ongoing issues that were happening there. So they're saying that what was presented to the registrar is different from what they signed. He had also talked about not having the three-legged, as now having the four-legged stool, and one kept thinking, so all these 25 parties, what about if we just have the 25-legged stool, since each party wants to have a stake in the coalition? So that is why they presented this letter to the Registrar of Political Parties. And again, remember that they have up until May 9th to actually present the document. But just as Victor has mentioned there, the Secretariat Executive Director, that is Raphael Tuju, came out to also say that they're discussing all these issues in-house, and once they agree, they will issue an appropriate statement. But even as we talk about this running mate question and Wiper also wanting to be considered on this issue, even the Jubilee party is coming out strongly to say that when it comes to the running mate question, it needs to be a pressure for the Mount Kenya. We're having also other parties saying that this needs to be an area of consideration. So really, with all these parties that are in the Azimio coalition, which way will they go when it comes to the running mate, choosing that running mate? And again, also remember that there are various factors to be considered, key among them being the number of votes that you're bringing to the table when it comes to that running mate question. So just as this secretariat there mentioned, we're trying to see how they will quell all these issues that are happening in that particular coalition. So away from that, the third way party leader, the Third Way Alliance party leader, that is Ekuru Aukot, has also moved to the High Court to bar Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, as well as Musalia Mudavadi, saying that the High Court needs to disqualify them from the August 9th general elections, citing that they are already enjoying retirement benefits, and the court should issue an interpretation to the effect that they are not fit to vie for these positions, given the fact that they are already enjoying retirement benefits, and so with that, then they are not fit to run for any position. And also, lastly, we have Again, Ngatia in the eye of a storm of a degree. This is one of the aspirants eyeing the gubernatorial seat in Nairobi. That is Richard Ngatia via the Jubilee Party ticket. And just as submitted by a Kenyan, that is George Mwanzia, he is saying that this particular aspirant does not have the proper qualifications. And so by that, he is not fit to vie for this position. So what does this mean for Richard Ngatia, who's eyeing Nairobi's top job? Regina.
Good question. And we're not going to delve into matters politics, neither are we going to talk about fuel. I think there's only so much you can talk about that. Let me just give you an overview of what has been making headlines in other circles, and I'd want to take you to the corridors of justice, where 303 million is what, that is a total amount that Peter Kilu Makau has been ordered to surrender to the state, being illegal proceeds of money laundering. Now, according to Justice Esther Minor, the amount he acquired, that is Peter Kilu, was illegal proceeds of money laundering, where his two companies, Kimako Connections Limited and Pescon Kenya, were used as vehicles to siphon the funds by betting firm Mozart Kenya Limited. Now, the judge's rules that the monies were 303 million shillings to be surrendered to the state. Now, the decision makes it a major win for the state in the crackdown of betting. That is just from the corridors of justice, and also just a little bit from politics. We saw there now Kotu has thrown its weight behind Raila and says that workers are safe with him. That is Atuoli there, who's been quoted in this particular daily, talking about why Kotu is firmly behind Raila Odinga's quest for the top seat in the country. Then, in as far as teachers are concerned, demands are still on, with teachers making demands on delayed promotions. Quoted here is the chairperson of KATI there, that's the Kenya Association of Technical Training Institutions, who says, "We have been waiting for promotions and recognition for so long. Some of our members have left service after 4 years without getting promotions." And this is talking about, this comes at a time when ministry officials have been assuring tutors that their grievances are being addressed. But they're saying it is taking too long for them. Then also, quite something that you have observed, let's take you to the banking sector. Have you ever noticed that you do not have conveniences or washrooms within a banking hall? Have you ever noticed that?
Good observation.
Mbona unaongea ukweli?
Why?
Show me a bank, unless you're doing VIP service, where you have coffee and such, but
the washrooms are left for the staff.
Yes, washrooms are only entitled for the staff. That's just a by the way. But now let me take you to the roads. Is that, a court directed the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works to ensure that public toilets were constructed along all highways. Those who use the Western Road, Webuye, Busia, Kisumu, Navaholo,
Victor, mikono zote mbili.
Why are you targeting us? Why are you targeting us?
Mikono zote mbili.
Now, the only county that has adhered to this, this case actually started in 2020, but it has been a ping pong between the Ministry of Housing vis-a-vis the Ministry of Housing and Infrastructure. We also have issues of, environment and such. But it has been a ping pong, between these two ministries. This is a case that was handled in 2020, and this came about after a case was reported 5 years ago. Travelers in a Western Kenyan-bound bus were shocked after one of them was attacked by a snake as she answered the call of nature in a bush in Londiani on the Nakuru-Eldoret highway. Fortunately, the woman survived. It was a non-venomous snake. And this set the precedence for this particular case that has been dragging on and on. But it is something that needs to be considered. You can imagine being on the road up to 4, 6, actually not 4 hours. We're
9
talking
hours.
about 6, 7 hours. and even pulling over the security issue and such. It's something that needs to be done. That was on a very lighter note. That is something
and the only stopover is Nakuru or Narok. Victor?
Yes?
The only stopover is...
Mine is so simple. We have the announcers before you start the journey. Tunatoka at 9:30, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The next stop is?
Nakuru or Narok, depending on whether you're going to Eastern or Nyanza.
So prepare yourself.
And after Nakuru,
but the problem, Regina,
after Nakuru ni mpaka ushago.
Ujipange.
Mpaka penye unaenda. After Narok ni mpaka penye unaenda.
Regina, that's not the problem, because an announcement will be made at the bus stop, either huko chini, OTC, or whichever stage. But the problem is, kuna mtu atakula njugu hapa kwa gari.
Mahindi.
Yogurt.
Akona yogurt hapo. Akona some these soft drinks, you know.
Atanunua kuku hapo Nakuru, aeke kwa gari.
Alafu akimaliza na chukua kilolipop ameweka hapo. What did you expect? Na maji.
Na watoto kwanza.
Na soda.
And avocado probably akona hapo kwa bag.
Oh God, if there is one more, I am actually appreciating that in as far as, you know, jokes were concerned, people were saying, hey, umekawia kwani umeenda Meru. I'm like, tuko tu sawa, we good, we fine. We do at least 2 hours, maximum 3.
Hey, some places
now you see, Regina,
6,
with all
7
these
hours.
factors constant, that is why people going to Western or Nyanza, their trips, you just don't wake up and decide to go.
You plan.
These are trips you plan. If you're actually going to go there in December, you start as early as now.
Yes.
But you also still get the time to squeeze in a sofa set kwa carrier bus. Man, you guys are so dramatic.
That's
traditions.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't travel without sofa set, then you'll be asked.
Na mitungi za yellow.
That's a norm.
And you see, even after you're traveling down for the holidays, na mitungi na sofa set, after the holiday, the mitungi na sofa set zinarudi Nairobi.
Come back.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Leave us alone.
It's the culture, Regina. It's the culture.
I mean, you have to be comfortable, both home and away.
Oh, yes.
How about to invest in mitungis and sofa sets for mashinani? Yeah?
Naona mitungi ka 50 za yellow.
Yes.
Zimefungiliwa hapo nyuma.
Alafu kirudi nyumbani tafadhali kuna mitungi na sofa set inakungoja Nairobi.
One thing umesahau ni baiskeli. Utapata baiskeli hanging behind the emergency door.
Uko kwa
safari.
It's interesting.
Yes.
Anyway, let me bring you to the Daily Nation. There's a story here concerning HIV treatment. So Kenya begins a test of injectable drug for HIV, and this is just 3 months after the UK and the States approved an injectable HIV treatment, and Kenya administered the first injection on the first patient on the 31st of March. Of course, identity withheld. This was done at the Aga Khan University Hospital. So this drug is a combination of the traditional medicine that has always been used in the treatment of HIV, only that you will not have to be taking the daily drugs, the ARTs, every single day. This particular drug will be injected on a 2-month basis for the treatment of HIV, but it's specific to certain adults because it's yet to be officially rolled out as an official form of treatment. They are still continuing with studies to just ensure that it will be a safe option, because there's so many HIV patients who always, have a hard time when it comes to taking the drugs every single day. Drug overload is one of the biggest challenges that we have been seeing in the treatment of HIV. So looking at what the ministry had to say in regards to the number of people living with HIV that are on the ART treatment, termed as the life-saving treatment, the number is estimated to be 1.2 million by the close of 2021. So this is definitely good news for patients that are on the treatment for HIV. We are yet to see how this particular new treatment progresses, but that will be given these updates by the ministry as and when that will be possible. Now, moving on to some international news, and very briefly, let me read for you this header. Kenya, quote unquote, snubs Ukraine embassy's request to address parliament. Okay? So Kenya has declined a request from Ukraine to address parliament as Nairobi officials feared being dragged into the conflict with the potential to hurt its bilateral ties with the two capitals of these two countries, Moscow and Kyiv. So, looking at what a senior ministry official had to say, and according to this daily, they said that there was no need to allow the speech in the floor of the parliament, adding that they should make use of the available diplomatic channels and not go for particular countries per se, and especially so giving an audience at parliament.
Can I bring you up to speed with what is happening in business before, Victor, you take it away?
Sure. Yes.
Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta in October last year announced that, you know, you will not be listed on CRB if you had defaulted on a loan during what they referred to as a COVID period. Also, you will also not, be listed in as far as HELB is concerned. However, you will now be taken to court for defaulting on a HELB loan. Habari ndio hiyo, nirudie. You will now be taken to court for defaulting on the HELB loan. So the Higher Education Loans Board, HELB, has started taking defaulters to court to recover some of the 10.5 billion shillings that beneficiaries have not paid for over 10 years. So 15.5 billion shillings is a budgetary allocation to HELB for the next financial year. 5,000 is a penalty that HELB defaulters pay every month. 75,000 students who require loans amounting over 3.2 billion shillings. And it is looking at defaulting or defaulters who owe them a cool 10.5 billion shillings. I want to quote the Chief Executive Officer of the Higher Loans Board, Higher Education and Loans Board, that is HELB. And this is quite something. On KRA, you can see them. On KRA, you can see they are paying taxes. On NTSA, you can see they are buying their Subarus or Subrus, so to speak. This is how we are chasing one another. Are you seeing the humor from that CEO? On KRA, guys are paying taxes, and on NTSA, you can see they're buying their Subarus. This is how we are chasing one another.
So does it mean that on HELB is where they're drawing the line?
Yes, you see, they're opting to pay their taxes and buy vehicles, but they're not. Basically, he's pointing to a lack of willingness, not being able. It's not an issue of not being able, or rather lacking capacity to pay up these loans. It's pointing at the lack of willingness for these persons to actually pay.
Wamenunua Subaru ndo wakimbizwa.
Hapo ndio you know.
There lies the joke.
Tupelekwa mbio
Wakimbizane kwa barabara.
Baskeli ya kuibu. All right.
Priority ni Subaru na KRA kwanza.
I remembered someone telling me that once they were studying and they had applied for a HELB loan, not because that
they needed it,
but because ilikuwa inakuja kama boost.
Why do people do that?
Ilikuwa inakuja kama boost. It used to help them live that life in university. I can see Victor nodding. I don't know if you're one of those culprits. I have Victor to you.
Regina, okay, as we talk about money, there are two stories here. So millions wasted in Envoy's rent scandal. I'll give you residents of Kenya's ambassador to New York vacant for 10 years as taxpayer fork out millions. So the official residence has not been occupied for 10 years, but we still pay rent. This is what happens. The house gathers cobwebs. The ambassador lives on a leased property for which taxpayers actually are paying an annual rent of 23 million shillings, about 2 million bob per month. Okay. In addition, the mission in New York incurs annual maintenance expense of 120,000 and an annual utility cost of 868,000 shillings on the unoccupied property. That is according to the Auditor General, Nancy Gadongo, who actually queried the prevailing circumstances, putting the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in a spot over the mismanagement of government properties abroad. 10 years. Alafu ameenda merent how. And then, Moi grandson seeks 30 million shillings to clear bills. Gentleman called Collins Toroitich says that he needs 30 million to foot his bills. Doreen, how much do you need to foot your bills? Lens.
Let me not disclose.
Lens. Because anasema that Kibet told court that his grandfather was worth over 300 billion Kenya shillings. So, me number to 32.
32?
32.
Kenya shillings, ama USD, ama pounds?
Kenyan bob. So, all factors remaining constant, 270 billion shillings still remaining somewhere. 32 mnipe. Is it 30 billion? 30 minus 30 million? It's a lot of money, you guys. How much do you want?
Okay. Mimi, nimeachia Mungu anipea atanipea. Doreen,
all right, so let's come to Kimaliza. I want to just run you through what is happening on the police force. You can remember that Monday we had this story on particularly the bribery and recruitment process, especially for job seekers seeking jobs in the police force. And now this report just shows how graft is rampant in hiring of police, whereby it indicates that widespread bribery, nepotism, tribalism, and unfair distribution of vacancies in police recruitment process have been identified as some of the factors affecting performance in the police service. And also this study was done by the National Crime Research Center, has also identified, of course, low salaries, benefits, and benefit packages, inadequate resources, unfair promotion, and work frustrations as some of the reasons behind lack of motivation among officers. So basically just saying, when you see the police officers sometimes behaving the way they do, sometimes acting and feeling and being unmotivated, these are just some of the reasons and factors that result to that. And also the challenges start from the recruitment stage, where the report indicates that 40% of the respondents said the selection and recruitment of police officers in Kenya is not transparent. Like I said, on Monday we had this report where it showed that about a good number of job seekers ended up losing about 500,000. This is these different job seekers ended up losing that amount because they had to bribe, you know, some of the police officers just to get into this recruitment, and actually they ended up even not getting to that process. And even for those that are already inside the training are saying that they still had to bribe for them to be there, and some of them were not so open to disclose the amount because they were saying that in the event they end up doing that, then they might be removed from that training. So that is just what it shows there. And also the NCRC, the body that conducted this research, said those who highlighted lack of fairness during recruitment narrowed it down to bribery being at 80.6%, so taking the bigger chunk of the issues being witnessed in the police force. Nepotism at 43%, tribalism at 20.5%, and biased distribution of vacancies at 19%. So these are just some of the issues ailing the police service, and clearly bribery taking the bigger chunk of it.
Traffic Marshal A1, before you wind it up for us, we are not going to forget that Real walifanyile kitu. Woohoo! Yes, Benzema there and Luka Modric there, quashing the dreams of Chelsea there. But here, that have helped Real Madrid survive that particular game. So much more is already available on our website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. Watu wa Chelsea wataendelea kusema kwamba ni wivu ya watu wa Arsenal na Manchester United, but nonetheless Benzema aliwafanyia hile kitu. Sawa? Let's move on. We're going to be looking at the World Cup tour that is going to be happening in Nairobi from the 26th to the 27th. It's a wrap in as far as news is concerned. I'm Regina Manyara.